Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and today is episode 119. It's a beautiful day here in Michigan today. I am actually on vacation, so I'm doing nothing for the next 6 days, so I'm excited. But hopefully, I can give you guys a mental vacation today for the next hour and a half or whatever, talking about habitat. Now, last week on Instagram, I threw up a story. It said, hey, anybody has any habitat questions, food plots, hinge cutting habitat, anything related to that, hit me up. I'm going to have my good buddy Steven Stockman on from Missouri, and we're going to talk about it. His full-time job is land. He's a land specialist every day. That's what he does. He molds people's properties and tries to make them the best that they could possibly be. He's a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to get into a lot of that today. So we're going to answer a lot of your questions. Sit back, relax. Like I said, hopefully this will be a mental vacation for you for the next hour and a half. Maybe stop thinking about your cubicle life or whatever and just get you in the mindset of whitetails. So hopefully our answers are what you want to hear, I hope. But we get into a lot of stuff. So I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to get over to this interview with Steven, and I'm going to let it go. So here it is. Take it away. And we're back for another episode of the Fall Podcast. And today I've got another return guest on today. One of my good friends. You've been on before. I mean, you were one of the first guests I had on. Probably, I think it was episode 8. Isn't that right? I think you were 8, somewhere around there.
If I remember right, I was sitting somewhere in Pennsylvania in a hotel room when we were talking.
You were actually with Kip Adams, I believe. Is that right?
Yep. That's correct. Yep. We were on his farm in it wasn't very far from where I was staying, but we were up on his farm doing a habitat management course with the QDMA on that particular trip, and man, it was a good one too.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you get with those guys from the QDMA, especially like Kip and all those guys, like they know their shit. Like they're fucking good.
Yeah, like Kip and Matt Ross, and Dr. Craig Harper and all those guys, man. They live and breathe it, and they do it every single day for a living, and they're so tuned in.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Before we do get too far though, I mean, people are probably wondering who the hell you are. So say your name, and I know before, if anybody hasn't listened to episode 8, just kind of give like a brief who you are, where you're from kind of deal.
Yeah, sure. His name is Steven Stockman. I'm from north central Missouri, and I'm fortunate enough to be I'm a farm manager, habitat specialist, I guess you call it. Also work with Whitetail Property Real Estate here in north central Missouri with my partner Jeff Probst. And man, we live and breathe it every day too. We're out in a bunks and on farms and making people's dreams come true every day.
100%. And honestly, you've taught me so much in the last 5 or 6 years about habitat, farm management, and our mutual friend Jake Illinger, helped me out a lot too.
Yeah.
And I like to bounce ideas off of you as much as I can, and I don't know, the way you do things are top notch, and you're dialed. You are very dialed, and I mean, how long you been doing this? So the Whitetail Properties thing and farm management specialist, stuff like that. How long you been doing that? But I mean, I know you've been doing habitat for a long time, but specifically like with Whitetail Properties, how long you been at it now?
Yeah, like this is the 3rd year with Whitetail Properties. I mean, and just full-time farm management, and land specialist. So, man, I've been doing it for a long time though. I mean, I was working a full-time, 40, 50 hour a week job and working, an extra, I don't know. I mean, 10 years I did that extra, doing farm management, managing properties. I think I was managing somewhere around 7,000 acres, after a full-time job every day.
Yeah. I mean, you've been around the block and you've done things the right way. And like I said, at a high level, and, in different states too, not just Missouri. I mean, you've done stuff in Kansas, I think in Illinois, right? And in Iowa.
Yeah. Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, now Oklahoma. Going down in a couple weeks to our ranch in Oklahoma. We've got about 3,000 continuous acres down there, and it's a new project this year. It already has some food plots established, but it's right on the river, and it's going to be fun to dive into that and get some new food sources created down there and some new mixes for the mineral or for the feeders, and it's going to be a cool ranch to dial in.
Yeah, and that Oklahoma is like so unique to me. That's a state that I've actually never been to hunt.
Yep.
But you see a lot of big deer getting pulled out of there, and I think it's so cool. I would almost put it up there, chalk it up as like kind of a sleeper state in a way. Not a lot of people, it kind of goes under the radar, but I mean, there's some giants coming out of there.
And there's some big deer, and even we're just a short few miles off the Kansas border, but even just across the border, in Bigby's area and everything in South Central Kansas, he's killing consistently 190s every year. So, people see that, they see that on the TV show, they see that on social media, but they don't really dial into the location. But man, it's just a hot area, and you're right. I would chalk Oklahoma up as a little sleeper state, but I think it's. The secret's out. People are going to start gravitating that way, and it's over the counter tags also, I believe. So.
Yep. Now, for this podcast, we're going to talk a lot about habitat stuff, but I put it out on social media a couple of days ago for people for questions for you and everything to talk about. We got some questions in, but I have some questions as well, so we're just going to kind of sprinkle in here and there. But yeah, I guess one thing I just got struck into my mind is, okay, so you're out, and a lot of people listen to this are probably like, okay, yeah, he's managing in big buck states. If they're listening from like a PA or a Michigan or a Wisconsin or something like that. Now, that might be a little higher pressured area possibly. Now, my question to you is, do you change up your strategy if you're going to a higher pressure state, or on a farm or an area that you are, higher pressure, that deer or that, me, like in Michigan, we're trying to kill 125, 130 inch deer. That's like the upper echelon in my area. So, if you're going to a farm like that, are you changing up your strategies at all as far as habitat goes when you try to attack a farm and trying to mold it to a better habitat and better hunting, I guess you could say?
Well, it's kind of a tricky question, honestly, AB, just because every state, every farm, everything, it's all different habitat,
Right.
So, you go to Oklahoma and you're trying to plant plot screen for entrance and exit, and that stuff doesn't grow. There's not a lot of rain. It's sandy soils. It's going to grow some, but it's not going to do like it would here in North Missouri or Southern Iowa, Yep. That stuff gets 12, 14 foot tall, and it's just a wall. I don't believe I get those results out of that in Oklahoma. But with that being said, like every farm, some are big wide open farms, some are big timber tracts, some are combination farms. You have to adapt to your surroundings at some point. But I always go into it with the same strategy and the same outlook. You have deer on this farm, and you're wanting to keep them safe, and you're wanting to give them everything on this property that they need to stay there. Now, there's no high fences. They're all free range. They can go and do as they please. If it's the rut, they're going to hit a hot doe and they're going to go 2 miles, 3 miles, whatever. All that plays into it. But for the most part, all we can do is what we can do. So just give them the cover, give them the food, give them the shelter, the water, and just keep the pressure to a minimum as you can, and hunt smart. And I think you'll have high success.
For sure. So I guess I could rephrase that a little bit. I know it's kind of a loaded question. But I guess in your mindset, if let's say you're doing your farm in Missouri and I'm like, hey, come over to Michigan and help me mold my farm. Are you just going to take the same approach, I guess?
I will. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And because like you said, adapting, and Justin and I've talked about it before on the podcast, is like, in my personal opinion, what makes deer hunters a better deer hunter or a great deer hunter or whatever you want to call it, I think the ability for them to be able to adapt to different situations on the fly is like top notch.
Yep.
There's a lot of luck involved. Don't get me wrong. There's some skill involved too, and some know-it-all. Like, I don't mean like you got to know it all, but like you got to have some good common sense about deer hunting too. But I think those guys that can adapt on the fly are to any situation or any change, any weather change, anything like that. I think they're the most successful people, honestly, year in and year out.
Yeah, and you have to be able to read the situation as well. Because there's sometimes when, you want to, you see your cruiser and he's over there and you want to pull set and drop and go over to him. And there's some situations where he's going to be here. If I don't intrude there right now and just wait him out, we'll kill him here. You've got to be able to read the situation, the scenario, and you've got to be able to play on it whenever the situation's right.
Right. And I totally agree on that. Now, from your hunting strategy, you personally, are you more of an aggressive or a passive kind of hunter?
No, 100% passive. No. And I hunt most generally, it's 95% of the time I hunt from the outside in. With that being said, now I put food plots in strategic places where I can get in and out of them without spooking deer. Now, you're going to bump a deer every once in a while. You can't always keep them from behind you or whatever, but you're going to bump a deer every once in a while. But I do my best to get in and get out without being seen by a deer. And if you hunt those spots, I had really good advice a couple of years ago from Mark Drury, and he said, be the camera. He said, as long as you're getting in and out of that spot without spooking deer, the wind's in your face and you're hunting it smart, he said, the camera's not going to show you everything all the time. He goes, go be the camera, let the deer make a mistake and kill him.
Yep.
So I like to hunt from the outside in and then make a move if I need to.
No.
But I'm very patient.
Yeah. And it definitely shows. I mean, your track record is really good. I mean, you've got some studs. I've been fortunate to, we've got a couple nice farms and I've managed them for a long time, and I've laid off a lot of 4-year-olds and, try to kill them when they're 5 and 6. And just, I'm no different than anybody else, man. I just do it full time and have more time to put into it. That is literally what makes me different from anyone listening to this, is that literally I've got experience on these properties I've hunted. I've been on them for a long time, and I have the time to devote to it. I'm fortunate that way. Right. And, you talk about you're passing up 4-year-olds to try to get to 5 and 6-year-olds. Now, that didn't happen overnight, I'm going to guess. Like that's years of hunting.
Yep.
And that's, I guess you could say, like, you and I we're a little different when you're hunting your farm and I'm hunting my farm here. Your 5 and 6-year-olds are, I'm trying to get my 3 and 4-year-olds, so it's like, it's just all relative, and
that's right.
That's the same way with Mark Drury, Terry Drury, the Lakoskis, whoever, if I'm going to guess if they're hunting Michigan, which they would never probably hunt Michigan because, but if they were, I'm going to guess that they would be probably, trying to kill those 4-year-old. They're trying to kill a 4-year-old. When in Iowa they're trying to, just like you. I mean, Lee, I don't think he kills anything unless it's a 6-year-old. So it's like, it's just all relative and relating to your situation. I hope one day I can be able to kill consistently 4-year-olds in Michigan, but man, it just, it's tough. It takes a long time to get there.
Well, like you said, like here, we're fortunate enough to have big parcels. So, I'll have a 320, and then my neighbor will have for instance, my situation, I'll have a 320, and then we also have the bordering 160, and then my neighbor to the north has 400 acres continuous that only his granddaughter and his son-in-law hunt, and then my neighbor to the north, they have a continuous 600, so, and we're all for the most part on the same page, 100% on passing 3 and 4-year-old deer and trying to kill 5 and 6-year-old deer. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some 4-year-old deer that you just got to kill. You know what I mean?
Slammers.
Yeah. Just they're slammers, and also, you just can't keep them all home. You know what I mean? No matter what you do no matter what you do for hinge cuts and bedding and for entrance and exit and food plots and water sources, anything to make them comfortable. No matter what you do, you can't keep them all home, especially when the rut comes, because they will wander and they will get killed, especially if they're 170 inches and they're a 4-year-old. They're going to die.
Right. Now, that brings up a good point, though. So in your experience, have you ever had a buck that has just never left your farm, you think? And, you know, I wouldn't say he's never, like, went off the farm, like, but, I mean, most of the days he's on your farm all the time. Like, you see him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, actually, several. I mean, not that you actually see all the time. Most of my cameras see him more than I do. But yeah, I mean, I think I have a buck on every single farm that I hunt that doesn't leave the farm much.
Yep.
You know, and that rings true though with older animals as well, though. I mean, those 5 and 6 and 7-year-old deer, the older they get, the more their core area shrinks. The more the 4 and 5-year-olds are dominant, and they're pushing around the 6 and 7-year-olds and keeping them off, isolated to a little pocket during the rut. And those core areas just shrink, and those older deer just don't, for the most part. What I've seen or learned from other people is they don't want that big core area. They stay home.
Right. Which makes total sense. I mean, you hear it a lot. Like, you know, again, the Drury's and Lukoski say, you know, Mark Drury especially, he'll say as a deer gets older, his core area shrinks. And, you know, reason being is because that deer is just, I wouldn't say like lethargic or lazy. He just, you know, as you get older, you don't really want to get out of bed some days, you know, and you don't want to like leave too far.
Yeah, that, and he survived, you know, all those years in that neck of the woods and that pocket. He knows where to avoid people.
He's stress-free, you know, for the majority of the time. Stress-free environment.
And like you've heard it a million times, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think they have the same approach.
For sure. And okay, before we get into this more habitat stuff, that brings up a point that I've been wanting to ask you. You know, the big thing going on right now is like mobile hunting. And I know you're not like a mobile guy. I mean, you don't take a stand on your back and hang it, hunt it, and then take it down and move around. I mean, if you're mobile, if you see deer doing one thing a lot and you got to get in there, you'll go hang a stand and hunt it. Like, that's kind of your mobile, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 280 pounds, and me packing all my gear and stands and stuff and chasing these deer around for a one setter. I mean, it blows scent control completely out of the water when you do that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, that's 280 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal. I mean, that's all that is.
Yeah, those are your words, not mine. I've never heard my wife say that.
She says that. Don't worry.
Oh yeah.
She told me the other day that she.
That's where you got it.
Yeah. I took it out of Christy's book. I guess what I'm saying though is like stands. You have stands year after year that are in the same tree, right? I mean, for years.
I do. Yep. Absolutely.
Do you honestly? I mean, a lot of guys say like deer get used to that. I mean, are you having deer get used to those and like year in and year out? I mean, they might be hot for 3 years and then for like 3 more years it's just cold. I mean, have you ever ran into that at all?
I have ran into that, and it also depends on, you know, in my situation, we have a lot of crops in our area, so it also depends on, you know, what's planted, what's not planted. And let's say it's hot during corn seasons and it's cold during bean seasons. You know what I mean?
Yep. I got you.
So I've had that, but for most cases, all my stand placements have been over. I mean, I put a lot of time into putting them there. I mean, and then when I hunt them, you know, let's just say I put a camera there and I monitor it, I set a box blind and I'm just hunting, you know, and I see this and repeatedly I see these deer come out of this corner. I see them come out of this. I see them cross here on this hog's back and go down this ditch. I pay attention to all that, and then I go hang a stand, you know, for a particular wind. And then once I get there, usually the first hunt or two, I tweak it because I may be just off the mark or I may be right on the money, but I tweak it. But then after that, dude, like I I've got a lot of stand locations in several farms, and I just don't hunt them enough to burn them.
Right. You're not going night after night, morning after morning, burning those stands out.
Nope, not at all. And I'm very fortunate in that aspect. A lot of guys don't have that aspect, and I get it. And what I can say for that is, you're not alone. Number one, because it's getting harder and harder to find your own piece of heaven. Leasing or just getting permission. Most of it's not a sales rep or a sales ad here, but I mean, people are just buying land so they've got their own dirt and they can do what they want when they want.
Right.
On it.
Yeah, it is. It's tough sledding out there. I mean, like you said, the days of walking around and knocking on doors, like, it's slim pickings out there.
Oh man. And even like in my county where I live, you can't find a lease. I mean, you can't find a lease in this county. We sell land here. We sell a lot of land and some quality farms. But most of the stuff we're selling, man, is stuff that's been in the family for years and years and years. It's not like, people are getting it and they're holding on to it for the most part.
Right. Yeah.
So
I get that for sure.
Yeah.
Talking about your trail cams, though, I'm just geeking out about this now, and I'm going question after question because I just got more coming in my head because I love talking to you about it. But trail cams, so now when you get into season, your cameras have been deployed. Like, what's your trail cam strategy for checking them? I mean, I know you're like a scent freak. You're conscious about that stuff. But like, are you waiting for a particular day? A rainy day maybe, or what is your strategy for checking them so you're not blowing out the county?
Well, rain's awesome because first of all, it kills your noise. Second of all, it washes all your scent away, and it cuts down visibility for deer. They're hearing noises, and there's it's a mess out there. So they're on high alert, but at the same time, it's hard for them to pick you out or do anything. So rain days are amazing. If you can go on a rain day and check your cameras, but always, don't be bebopping around out there. If you're hunting a specific mature deer, don't be bebopping around out there at 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning checking your trail cameras, or at 4 and 5 or 6 o'clock at night, on the soybean field edge or standing corn or whatever. Don't go to your best spots and check those cameras when deer are active. Just do it midday, 11 to 2, get in there from that time and try to go when the wind's blowing, put the wind in your face, go in, check them, get out real quick, and wear rubber boots.
Always wear rubber boots, my opinion. Wear knee highs. Always. You can spray down and everything, but I agree 100%. Like, there's been times, I've confided in you a lot about my 1 acre piece, small timber around here. And there was a day, during seasons a couple years ago, and I'm like, man, I really need to go check that camera. Like, I haven't checked it forever. I felt like, and the wind, this is no shit. I'm driving to the farm and I pull into the driveway and I get out of the truck, and I'm not kidding you. It was like something that came over me. The winds shifted and was like right in my back, like going right towards the timber that I'm going at. And I'm like, I can't go in there. Like, it's the only way in the farm, the only way I can go in there. And I'm like, there's no way. Cause I knew there was hunters hunting the adjoining property on the other side, and I'm like, and I pushed out of there. I got right back in my truck and left. And I had some people ask me, they're like, why, without me telling them the story, they're like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, well, the wind switched on me and I wasn't taking that chance. I don't care how good your scent control is. Like, you can't take that chance. In my area, one time, I feel like in my head, I got to keep myself honest. So I feel like I have the mindset of one time you kick that deer out of there, the deer that you want, you're not going to see him again. And if I feel like if I don't keep that mindset, then I won't keep myself accountable. I guess that's a way for me keeping myself accountable.
Yeah, and where I was going a little bit earlier, I got off track, but we have bigger parcels of ground here, right?
Yep.
where you guys have a lot of smaller tracts. You might have 20 acres, 40 acres, 60 acres, 80 acres, just boom, 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 stacked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the pressure for you in Michigan is way above and beyond of anything I've got in north central Missouri.
Yep.
I mean, we just, like I said, bigger parcels, fewer hunters on those parcels, where for you have smaller tracts with more hunters. So if you go bouncing into your bedroom that you created for the one deer to kill in that area, or what you've seen or targeted, you go bounce into that area with the wind in your back, even if it's midday, he's home, he's in his bedroom.
Right. Yep.
So you go busted in there with the wind to your back and checking the trail camera just to get the intel that he's in there. He's been in there. He's been on your cameras. You've seen him on your cameras. You're just bouncing in there to, blow him out, basically, for Ted and Jerry Bob over on the 40 next to you to shoot him real quick.
Jerry Bob, that guy, he shoots everything.
just lays them over.
Just piss pounds them. Just sending nukes out there.
Yeah, just hammers them.
Shit, where was I going with this? You had a good point there, and I was going to add on to that. I can't remember where I was going to go with it now. But I agree, like that, I don't know. Just my philosophy, and Jake helped me, put this to bed, was like, stay the hell out of your farm. If you can, stay the hell out. And he put it really simple. He goes, I get a lot of people that get a hold of me and they want me to, consult their land. And a lot of people want it to be this nice, pristine thing that they can enjoy. So he says, first and foremost, what is your goals with this property? Is it recreational? Are you going to be riding four-wheelers all over all the time? Is it just for something for your family to enjoy, to, walk around and be outdoors all the time? Or is it like a hardcore, like, hunting property? He's like, I like to get that out there right away because I want to know what we're dealing with, because if it's going to be a recreational thing, it's a totally different approach. And for me, for him, I'm saying, to be the most effective and have his clients have the best opportunity, he wants to give them the best plan. And that's what he did with me. He's like, what's your plan? And I'm like, honestly, this is hunting farm, nothing else. Like, it's cash cropped, so there's tractors and everything around there, but this is hunting. And he goes, stay the hell out of here. Get it done, stay the hell out. And I'm like, okay. And then that first camera pull that I had that year told me everything I needed to know, that he was right with that. In that little 1 acre patch of timber. Is unbelievable.
Just give them what they want.
Yep.
Leave them alone and let them feel safe, and then hunt them on the. You have to pick your windows to hunt them or kill them.
Yep.
Now, with that being said, you don't always kill them when you go to hunt them. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I can't tell you
it's
how
hunting.
many days. Yeah, it's still hunting. It's no matter how many days you get to hunt or how much you do it or how good you are at it. Like you said earlier, there's still a large amount of luck in it. These things they just do anything and everything at will whenever they want. But yes, pick your windows, watch the weather, go in on the right wind and the right conditions, and hunt them on those conditions. Other than that, just stay the hell out and just let them do their thing. Let them feel comfortable. Right. It's like the Marriott hotel for them. You make it nice and cozy and warm, and they feel safe and comfortable, and just leave them be.
Yep, for sure. And that's another thing. Jake was saying something that he did on his farm. It was, he went in there and he put like clover down in the timber, like in his hinge cut, and it was just beautiful, lush and everything. And he said that's something I definitely would try to do. So the other day, this was like 3 days ago, I went back and I was looking through a whole bunch of trail cams, and I actually came up on some trail cams that I had in that 1 acre the first year that I put them in there after we did that hinge cut. And I didn't have clover in there. And boy, did I learn a lot from that until the next year. Was camera in the same position, but I had clover in there. Wow. Unbelievable, the difference. And I'm not just saying deer eating the clover, but I'm just saying deer sightings in daylight. And
Right. Yep.
it was unbelievable the amount of bucks and just deer in general that I was seeing on camera in daylight. And that was a total game changer because from year to year, I didn't change a thing. We did that hinge cut. Other than I, Frosty did that clover and it came up like a son of a bitch and it did really well and the deer just loved it. And like I said, I didn't go back and hinge cut anymore. I just let it be and it worked. It helped. Now it's just figuring out how the hell to hunt it at that point.
Absolutely. Well, that makes a hell of a difference. Sorry, the girls were running over from grandma's, so I was
No, you're good. You are good.
The clover in the bedroom makes a hell of a difference. Like you said, I mean, those deer are going to bed down. They're going to get up. They're going to move around in that cover and eat that clover all times a day. So you're going to have constant daylight activity.
Yep. And so we're about 30 minutes into this, but I want to get into some habitat stuff here a little deeper. I'm going to get in some questions of some guys in the IG. I put that question out there. So first one, I'm going to throw this at you. So the question is, bedding in the center or on the edge of the property. So I think what they're asking is like, would you rather have the bedding on the edge, of your property or in the center?
100% center. And I say that because would you rather have all your deer in the center of your property so you can kill them on all four sides? Or would you rather have the deer on the fringe of your property so they can get up, jump the fence, and get killed? Or it's a 50-50 shot then.
Yep.
Put them in the center of your property. That way you can keep them on your property as much as you can, and then hunt them on all sides of them, on all wind directions.
For sure. Now, I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to say, does the size of the property matter to you? Now, I guess if you're like 5 acres or less or 10 acres less, I mean, that's pretty small. But, if
it's pretty hard to
that's difficult.
Pretty hard to enhance 5 acres to hold. You can hold a mature buck in 5 acres easy.
Yep.
You just have the pressure. It's all about pressure, and it's all about what's there for them to feel safe or how you make it.
Yep. So I guess, let's start at 30 acres. 30 acres and bigger, does it matter the size, I guess?
In my opinion, I think the center is always better.
So no matter the size, whether it's, and I'll be honest with you, my 1 acre, it's the center is where I made the thickest part. I mean, I thickened it all up, but the center is like, and that's where they hang out.
Well, yeah, but I'm not going to say it's common sense because that sounds like I'm poking at somebody, and that's not what I'm about at all. But if it's in the center of the property, they're on your property more. If they're consistently bedding in the center of your property, they're on your property more than your neighbors.
Right.
So, and then it also allows you to pattern them to and from wherever they're going and hunt them on all those wind directions.
Yep.
So my personal opinion, and it could be different from Mark or Lee or, Kip and all these guys that are doing it. Like they're just madmen, and they're just animals at this stuff. They might differ, but my opinion is I feel like the center of your property would always be the best location if you have the material to work with.
I agree. And I guess the way that I like to look at it, though, too, is if it's the center of your property, it gives you more options to access. And more options, or it gives you, I feel like, a little more room for error. Does that sound right? I mean,
absolutely.
To me, the way my mind works is you have, whether you like to hunt the fringes or get aggressive. I mean,
you can do it 2 ways. I mean, less intrusion or consistent intrusion. Because what I've noticed up here is that I can do the same thing. I can do the same thing every day or every other day and still see the same deer in the same family groups jump up in the same area.
Yep.
But they'll stand up, go off about 20 yards, stop and look at me, and I'll go on and do my thing, and then they'll bed back down or go back to their their beds. But I think when you try to get sneaky, or you do something completely out of the normal, then I think that's when they're like, whoa. If you drive a 4-wheeler through your property every single day, whether you're just looking at birds, or you're checking your cameras, or you're hanging stands, or you're putting chairs and blinds, or no matter what you're doing, if you're doing it consistently with a gas 4-wheeler or whatever, and then hunting season comes, you're walking everywhere, I think the deer are like, whoa. First, there's human scent, and then why is he walking? Like yesterday, he was riding a 4-wheeler.
Right.
So
that makes total sense.
Yeah, I think to a point they will adjust to whatever you're doing. I just think when you throw something out of the ordinary into the mix, that's when they get aware and become alert.
And I just put that video out about the screening that I put on one of my farms in Michigan, and I even said that in there, like, hopefully deer don't come out and they're like, oh, what the fuck's this? Like, this is new. Like, this was never here before. Like, I'm always leery about that in Michigan, like, in our spot, because I've been known to do too much in an area. You know what I mean? And it's like, but then I think of, like, that border patrol, or that, a screen looks a lot like corn. So I got a feeling it's like, crops come up every year, so deer have to be like, oh, this is nothing new. I wouldn't think, but I always think that way.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to overdo it with the border patrol or the plot screen. Dude, I use plot screen like no one's business. I plan it, I've planned it along gravel roads inside the property. Border patrol, literally.
Yep.
And I'm talking like, half mile of it. A wall. I've done it. But I strategically use mine. Anymore, it's strictly entrance and exit the blinds. If I can just have that cover, if I can create that cover in the open areas to get me in and out of those blinds without busting deer out of the food sources or the plots or whatever, then it gives me that much more time to hunt that location without blowing it out.
For sure. Yeah.
Especially if I'm hunting a specific deer,
Yep. I want to get back to screening. I remember what my train of thought was, 5 minutes ago. My whole plan, like with the bedding in the center of the property, is my whole thought process, no matter what property I'm on, especially when I'm doing hinge cutting or anything like that, is I want that buck to come in there, and I want him to have to spend as much time as he can in that property, like in that area. Like, I don't want him to be able to, jog through there in 3 seconds. I want him to have to work to get through it. So with that bedding in the middle of the farm, I want him to be able to, like, get in there, and he's got to make his way through like a maze. That's the way I approach everything, especially with hinge cutting, and I'm going to get into hinge cutting in a second. But that's kind of my train of thought. Are you kind of around the same realm there?
Yeah, and I'll answer to that, but it's going to touch on hinge cutting too. But when you're talking about hinge cutting, creating those bedrooms, it's exactly what you just described. What you're trying to do is just imagine you walk into a timber and you can see 300 yards or 200 yards. Okay. Well, deer can see better than us. So they walk through that timber. They're using their nose, which is way better than us, and their eyes. And they check that, at a fast walk. And they don't even have to go around the whole timber. They just they cut through it at an angle with the wind in their face or their back or whatever, and they scent check it all, and they can see everything else, and they're gone. So you go create that hinge cut. First, you're putting that browse down there at their level where they can eat it all the time right there at their bed. But what a step further is, now when the rut comes and that buck's chasing a doe around and she is trying to get away from him. So what's she going to do? She's going to go to the thickest, nastiest shit on the property, and she's going to try to get the hell away from him. So she's going to run into this hinge cut, and you've got trees here, and you got trees here, and you've got trees tied down over here, and you've got little walkways here to dive under and scoot around. And so she's doing that, and he's following her. So all the time, let's just say you have 30 acres. Well, instead of that deer walking through your 30 acres in 7 minutes, he's now been in a hinge cut for 13 minutes, and he still is chasing this doe around.
Yeah.
So you put the deer on your property in daylight, on his feet, more opportunity to chances to kill him. Number two, diving in a little deeper than that, it also creates, it helps with the social structure.
Yep.
Deer are, they don't like the pressure of other deer, and they're very big social group animals. So if you have a hinge cut here and or let's say you don't have a hinge cut, let me back up. You don't have a hinge cut. You have a doe group bedding here, and then 150 yards, you got a doe group bedding over here. And then over in this triangle corner, you have a doe group bedding over here. They stand up and they browse and they see each other. That social pressure from they see each other, they don't like it. So they move away from each other.
Yep.
So you create that hinge cut. You got one here, you got one here, you got one here, you got one here. They stand up and browse on that stuff, and they don't see any other deer.
Yep.
That it lowers that pressure on your farm so much, all while creating more holding capacity on your property, because now they can't see each other, so you're drawing more deer in to be able to bed and keep the pressure down on your property. So it's huge. It's not the answer for everything, but it's huge for management.
For sure. And to go a little further on that, you talk about the does in the rut, they're going to go to the thickest shit they can find. I actually, that year that I was chasing Jim Abbott and that 4-year-old, I have a sequence of pictures on that trail cam in the middle of my hinge cut of a doe running in and literally crawling under the thickest part of the 1 acre, and him coming in right after her and basically standing over her. And they were in there I want to say they were in there for 20 minutes. And every picture was, they were different, like she would be up on this one and he'd be on the other side of a deadfall or on the other side of a hinge cut. Like, it was crazy. Like, I learned so much from that. And I have to believe, that's 1 acre timber in the middle of nowhere. Like, that doe came from across the field from somewhere, and she knew that was there. She went in there and dove in there. And, if I was there, and shoulda, coulda, woulda, if I was even around and hunting that, maybe I would have been able to have an opportunity. And that's what I'm trying to go for with that 1 acre. And even 10 acres, 20 acres or something, I'm trying to get deer attracted to this. I'm not going into it saying I want to hold deer, because I think it's so hard to hold specific deer in my area. I'm going into it thinking, okay, in the rut phases, I want to be able to attract does. That's what I want to do, because these bucks are going to be cruising, and I know from experience around this area, big deer get killed in little woodlots around this area because they're jumping from woodlot to woodlot downwind in the rut, checking these, little woodlots for does, for hot does. That's what they're doing. And they just jump all rut. That's what they do. And if you're there, capitalize. That's just how it happens around here. So, yeah, I don't know. But, that's all goes to adapting, too. Like, in your area, it might not be like that. You got to figure out what that is. Like you said, there's a lot of big timber in your county and like where you're at. So, but on to hinge cutting. So another question that I had is, right now we are in June, going into July almost. Is it too late to hinge cut right now?
It's not, no. And actually, I had. You're speaking of Jake a little bit ago. Jake and I have plans to meet we always meet in March. Every year Jake comes to Missouri, and him and I work together on some client farms. And for me, it's a learning experience, because I get to work hand in hand with Jake, and I'm very fortunate enough to be in a position where I can call him a good buddy of mine, and I can call him today and ask him any question I want, and he'll give me an answer and tell me how to do it or whatever. But very, very fortunate to be able to do that. With that being said, COVID-19, of course, put the halt on that trip this year. So we've rescheduled for this month, and I don't think we're going to get it done this month either, just because everything's still kind of up in the air and people are still kind of weird about it. And so, no, I don't think I'm answering that question kind of in a big, broad way, but we were planning on hinge cutting in June. The end of June.
Yep.
So, no, I don't think so. If you have leaves on it or you have no leaves on it, Now, I don't think you want to be in there in August or September when the deer, I say when they're getting their brains back, when the velvet's coming off, you don't want to be in their bedroom cutting down trees. That's the last thing you want to be doing. Even if it is for bedding for them, the last thing you want to do is go in there and destruct them whenever you're going to start hunting them in a month or 15 days.
Yep.
So I would say summertime. You're fine in the summer, but once you get into August, I'd just stay out and leave it be until after season.
Right. Yeah, and personally, I like to do it in the winter because it gives me something to do in the winter, when everything's dormant and everything. But I like to do it right now in the 1 acre. There's a lot of dead ash in there already, and right now you can really see what the dead trees are. And now hinge cutting a dead tree is not going to make it come back to life or anything, but I'm looking for structure. And that tree does me no good, even if it's a dead up in the air. So I'm going in and labeling those trees right now that are dead. I'm just, putting a little spray can on them. And, when I come in the winter, I know which ones are dead, and I can drop those for strategically, more structure. So that's something I've been putting off for the last 2 years. Finally, I'm doing it this year. But and to talk about Jake a little bit, I've talked about Jake a lot, but Jake is a machine, man. He is one of the best. I mean, you got the guys out there. Jake's one, Jeff Sturgis knows his crap. Like, there's a lot of guys out there that know their stuff. Like Jake, I've worked hand in hand with him. He's been up to the 1 acre. He's a machine. He does. I've never seen a guy walk up to any size tree and not be intimidated, but him. You know what I mean? He'll cut down some of the biggest trees I've ever seen in my life and just walk away like, I owned you.
That's what you do. You just cut them.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. He knows his shit, man. He's
He's an animal, and he's not old by any means, but I mean the old boy. I mean, he's got some miles under his boots, and he has drive like nothing I've ever seen. He's a working son of a bitch. He puts his boots on, he laces them up, he gets his shit ready, loads the truck, and he goes to work. And when he gets there, he's ready to work.
Yep.
And he's gonna work. I mean, hell, we did a client's farm here in Missouri a couple of years, 2 years ago, and I think we spent a day and a half on about, I don't know, probably a 3.5 acre hinge cut, and I'm talking it was like nonstop. Just we were rocking and rolling, and Jake, no big deal. But we always spend a week together up here. And by the end of the week, I'm telling you right now, I'm like, oh I'm like a little girl. I'm whining about my back,
tail between your legs.
Yeah, and I try to be tough for Jake, and he's just like, it hurts, doesn't it? I'm like, nope. Nope, it doesn't.
You talk about a guy that's passionate about what he does. That's the guy. Like,
yeah.
And he's always got a smile on his face. He shows up. He's a good morale guy. He's just like, let's get to work. Let's have fun today. And he's got that pep in his step. It's great. He's a good dude, solid dude.
Yeah, he's a wealth of information too. He's very good at what he does.
Yep, for sure. Moving on here. Got a couple more questions. So, another guy says, beans are planted surrounding our property. Any suggestions for fall plots to attract for late season?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have a couple farms. In particular, I'm here where I'm at. We have a lot of soybean and corn. And the years I have beans, man, I go in there and usually right when the beans are starting to yellow, the leaves are yellowing. Yep. And I go in there with, sometimes brassica, sometimes buckforage oats, sometimes winter wheat, sometimes a combination of all of them. And I broadcast that stuff into it. Like, it's basically like a little secret honey hole because you don't know what's there until they combine the beans. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
So the bean leaves are yellowing. You go in there, you broadcast your seed in there. It gets down below on the dirt, and then the leaves fall on the seed, and then it germinates, holds the moisture, germinates, and then you have beans there with oats, winter wheat, brassicas, whatever you planted, comes up within the beans, and then they harvest the beans, and you still have a green canopy of brassicas or what the green you planted. So it's a very easy, a very cheap, convenient way to plant a green plot when you have nothing but soybeans around you. The timing is impeccable, though. It's best to do it right before rain, and it's best to do it always when the leaves are yellowing on the beans.
Yep. And buckforage oats, I mean, they'll grow on cement or on a driveway. That's the best thing about them, and they're really palatable, and frost doesn't really take them over, right? I mean, they handle the frost pretty good.
No, and I mean, especially with buckforage oats, I did a bunch of that last year in our beans, and I'm gonna tell you right now, dude, like this spring, I had buckforage oats again, bright green, deer were on them, turkeys were strutting in it, they were all over them.
Yep.
So yeah, buckforage oats are awesome. They grew up and then they reseeded and came back, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So
what? Okay, so
it's great to plant beans or to plant corn in it.
Yep, and you just broadcast it right in it and just let it go, right?
Just broadcast and walk away.
I mean, I've heard of guys. I got a buddy that he'll like plant his food plots, and then he's not the cleanliest guy. He'll leave us, seed in the back of the truck. I've seen oats growing in the back of his truck. No shit. Like they're just, there's this little plant, and it's buckforage oats, and it's like they'll grow in the back of a pickup. So if it gets some sunlight and a little bit of moisture, it's gonna grow.
Trust me, just take a handful of it, throw it in the driveway out in your gravel, and then come back in a week and tell me what you see. You're going to have oats all over your rock. I mean, it grows in anything, like you were saying. I mean, you throw it in the rock driveway. I'm putting it in the seeder. I'm putting it in the ferminator. I'm dumping it in the drill. I mean, it grows in everything.
Yep. Would you do that in a cornfield?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I have done it in a cornfield. It's just harder,
So do you wait till it's like harvested, or what do you do there?
Well, yeah, you could do that. I don't know that you're going to get you won't have the same moisture content, because then everything's just exposed to complete sunlight, basically.
Right. And I guess to answer that further, you never know when corn's going to be harvested, because I mean, we've had corn in Christmas that hasn't been harvested here, just because sometimes it's too wet and you can't get into the field, and so it might be a little difficult. But you could walk up and down the rows, right, and just broadcast it.
Absolutely, you can, and it will grow that way. That's why I say it'll do the exact same thing in corn. It's harder to maneuver through it and do it.
Right. Now,
and if you do it. Let's say you do it before they cut it. I mean, let's say you put winter wheat in or something like that. You could go in there like a week or even a day before they cut it. If you know when the farmer's going to cut it, you can go in there and do that little honey hole in there, and then let him come in there and cut it and put all that strap on top of it. All that, all the stuff from the corn husk and everything. It shreds it.
Yep. Just acts like a compost, right?
All it does is it just sets on top there, holds the moisture in, and then your stuff germinates and you're rock and rolling.
Yep. Man, that's a good idea. I actually didn't even think about that. I might do that this year in some corn. Now, let's say you were to plant something like that, some oats or anything like that. Let's say it's a farm that you're not farming, like maybe you're leasing. And is it something that you should probably ask the farmer about, or is it something that like, he's going to probably till it under the next year, so it's not really going to matter? Like, is it one of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always best to be on the same page with him, just so there's no surprises and he doesn't feel like you're raping his soil.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't think it's going to hurt it. Like you said, he's going to spray it or he's going to work it up the next year, depending on what he's planting anyway. So when you're doing that, his grain has already took everything they need to do its thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's already at maturity, and when it's fall time, he's just a month or 30 days away from harvesting it when you're doing all that. So it's already 100% mature.
Yep, I got
you. So you're not hurting his crop any at all. Besides maybe just fumbling around through it with your big ass size 11 boot stomping on it.
I don't have an 11, 9.5 at best.
That's what I got too. I'm just a little guy.
Just a wee little guffer.
Just a little guy. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea though. That's something definitely. I mean, in buckforage oats, you can go to TSC like around here. I mean, I know you guys. You don't have Tractor Supply out there, do you? You have like farm.
Yeah. We have Tractor Supply and we have Orscheln's.
Orscheln's, that's what it is. But, you go to TSC, you can get a bag, like a 50-pound bag of buck forage oats around here for like $25. And
Absolutely.
you can have a really good green plot,
Yep, and very hardy for your temperatures you guys have there.
Yeah, definitely. Now that kind of comes into my next question too. So if a guy wanted to stay, cheap, like let's say there's a guy on a budget and wants to do a plot. Now, that's regardless the size. I mean,
yeah.
Let's just say it's a little kill plot. What are you planting first? So what, like, to stay cheapest, and then how are you going about do that? So let's think of the guy that like doesn't probably have access to a tractor and a drill or a Furminator or something like that. Like, what is probably the cheapest way to go about doing a kill plot?
And you don't have to have access to all that. My reply is going to be clover. Clover's king in my book. I think you can establish it very easily. You can go in there, you can mow it off with a lawnmower. Let's say you mow the entire field off that you want to plant. Mow it off, spray it, kill it, right? And then, you can just broadcast clover seed out there. Clover seed will lay dormant in the ground for, 10 years before, and then it can all automatically just germinate sometimes. So
now, does that okay? To stop you real quick, does that matter the structure of the soil though? Like, what if it's like kind of sandy? Like, if you're not putting the right amount of potash or or fertilizer on it, does it kind of vary?
Well, I would definitely do a soil test no matter what you're going to do.
Yep.
I think you're silly if you don't, because if you have one time to do a food plot and you're trying to get the best food plot you can, the best bang for your buck, your first step should be do a soil test. And then you can just amend the soil. And I say clover because clover's so easy. Once you establish it, all you have to do is either A, clip it with a lawnmower, or
a weed whip,
spray, or just spray it, a couple times.
Yep.
Once in the spring, once in the fall. And then every season after it's established, you go in there, your last snow of the year when it's still freezing, and you just frost seed it. You overseed it, and it's cold, the ground's freezing and thawing, and as the ground's frozen in the morning, the seed's sitting on top of it that thaws out in the day. Well, it contracts and it just sucks that seed into the soil.
Yep.
And it's the cheapest way to overseed and keep a clover plot fresh.
And and in my experience, I've never overseeded a clover field to where it wouldn't grow. A lot of people are like, you don't want to put too much seed down. I've never put way too much clover seed down to where it didn't flourish. Have you ever done that?
No, it's always responded, man. It's always worked. And I will say this. If you're going to do clover, plant it in the fall. Don't plant in the spring, because in the springtime, all your weeds are coming up and competing.
Yep.
So you really have to stay on top of it with your mowing and your chemical to keep those weeds down to help the clover grow and establish. In the fall time, you're working it up. You spray the ground. Let's say you work it up with a garden tiller, or you pay your buddy to come in and just disc it up for you real quick. No big deal. Whatever. It could be array of things. Just soil test it, prep the soil, broadcast it, and let it grow.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And then as in the fall time, it's not competing with all those grasses and weeds because it's getting cooler in the evening. It's getting cooler as the days go on, and those grasses and weeds are dying out.
Yep. Yeah.
So I always try to establish my clover in the fall, and then frost seed the hell out of it in the spring, March, February, March, somewhere in that area.
Yep.
And then in springtime, just either mow it or spray it, and it's just rocking and rolling.
So a couple things that I worked for me to go with your points there. One thing is, a lot of people say to cut clover. I think you can cut clover, but I also think you can hurt clover while cutting it. I've done that, and I think I cut it too low. But I've talked to you about this the other day, and I told you my clover right now is knee-high and lush as hell. Lush. And there's no weeds in it. Nothing. It's the most lush food plot I've ever had. And You were like, don't cut it.
Leave it be.
You don't need to. Leave it be. The deer are still eating the shit out of it. let it go. And it's starting to flower out a little bit, which kind of made me, I don't know, it made me worry a little bit. I'm like, maybe I should just come in and clip the tops off. Well, last year I did it, and it didn't grow anymore. You know what I mean? It kind of like, didn't kill it, but it kind of just made it it stunted it. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think I cut it too low. This year, I'm not doing it. But to kind of go back to what you said, either plant it in the fall or February, March. So 2 Marches ago, it wasn't last March, it was the March before. I went in, and I'd have to find the specific date on it, but there was no snow on the ground. We didn't have any snow, but the ground was frost. I mean, it was hard. You know, you walk on like dirt in the plowed field, and it's just hard. You don't mush or nothing like that. So you've got like these little mountains, these little mounds of dirt, you know. So I went in there, and I just took a hard tine rake and just raked it all. Raked every bit of leaf and everything off that I wanted to. You could do it with a leaf blower if you want, but usually that time everything's still kind of frozen. Went in there, broadcasted the clover, and I just let it be. That was two springs ago. I haven't touched it since, and this is the best food plot I've ever had. I haven't even had to. I didn't put fertilizer down. I didn't do a soil test. I didn't spray it for anything. Nothing. I haven't touched it in 2 years, and it is the most lush thing I've ever seen, and deer are loving it. So March, you know, depending on, you know, you do a lot of frost seeding on top of the snow, right? A lot of guys do.
A lot, yeah.
And I've never really done that, and I've never really done it. To me, I was always like, I don't know why I don't want to do it. It's just in my head that I don't want to do it. So I just waited to get that, like, I don't know, it was good sun that day and the snow was gone. I'm like, this is perfect time. Good seed to soil contact, but there was still some moisture on the ground. I mean, it was still hard. And then once the day went on, it, you know, melted that moisture, and it gave it good germination and good seed to soil, and it just went off like crazy.
Yeah, well, one of the advantages of doing it in the snow, you see your coverage.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, you can look back behind you with that Whitetail Institute that I'm planting. It's blue and yellow behind you. You know, you just look and you can see, oh, I missed that spot over there. I need to go pepper it up some. For sure.
And to talk about soil samples too, I mean, you can do Whitetail Institute. You can order those soil kits for like $15, right?
Absolutely, man. They're cheap, and what's so cool about them is everything comes in the packet, and it's really cool you asked, or you mentioned that, because I've got an intern right now from Illinois that's working with me on some of the farms here in Missouri, and he's been here all week, and he's done a lot of soil samples for me, and he's done some soil samples, but he'd never used the Whitetail Institute ones. So just Tuesday morning, I think, I said, Monday night, I said, grab a soil sample. I said, let's go probe this food plot that I've worked up and put it in the bucket, and then bring it to the barn. I'll meet in the morning and we'll go over it. He said, all right. So I met him in the morning, and then I said, you got the bucket? Yep. And you got the dirt? Yep. And I went through, got the clogs out, broke it all up, mixed it all up good, opened up the packet, and I went through. It just gives you everything step by step.
It's easy. It's for dummies.
You don't screw it up. You open it up, you fill out the sheet, you pick 1 or 2 items that you want to plant, and number 1, they send you, when you fill it all out and you send the soil sample, what they do is they send you your first result. They say, hey, if you want to plant radishes, then you need to put this much this much this much this, and you're good to go. You know, B, imperial whitetail clover. If that's what you want to plant for number 2, then this is what you need to add, this is what you need to add, this is what you need to add. So they give you 2 options to plant with every soil test you do, and they're simple. They're, like you said, they're soil samples for dummies.
Well, and the ones that I order, because I get my soil samples through them, the ones I order, I specifically say, like, you can name your plot. I do, like, plot 1. And then,
I do too.
And then I say, like, this, I'm putting in, you know, such and such clover, deep woods clover, whatever it is. And then they'll give me back. They'll, like, okay, they take a look at it, and they spit me back, like, you need this amount of whatever. I can't remember. I have to read one. I don't have it right here, but they'll tell me exactly, like you said, what I need for clover. If you're doing corn or beans or whatever you're doing, they'll tell you. And sometimes one, I've got a food plot that's like straight blow sand, and one they're like, you need 37 tons of it, and I'm like, yeah, well, there might not be a plot there this year.
You need 37 tons of black dirt.
Yeah, you need some topsoil, son. Rethink your where your farm's at and where you want to put a food plot.
It's funny you said that. A few years ago, I had a client, and he said, "Hey, I just bought this farm. I want you to look at it." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "I need to add food, and I want your help to design it." And I said, "All right, no problem." So I went out, walked the farm, and found a cedar thicket down a dead-end dirt road, and it's probably 100 yards off the dirt road, but it's very favorable for a northwest or a northeast wind, which is what we have mostly up here in the hunting season. October, November, December is usually always north winds. So I walked in, and it's a big cedar thicket, and I said, well, this is it, I said, this is where you need it. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, you got pond here, you got pond just over the ridge here. I said, all these ridges come together right here. I said, you can literally just come in here and take a dozer, half a day's work, clean all this out, pile all the brush over here on the south end, put your box blind right here, come in behind the big brush pile to your box blind. You never bust deer coming in and out of it. And I said, but we're going to have to clean it up, and then we'll have to do soil samples and get things right. So I did a soil sample after everything was dozed and cleaned out. Soil sample from Whitetail Institute came back and said I needed 5,000 pounds of lime per acre. And that's I mean, it does not surprise me because it was all cedar trees. So all that acidity, it absorbs all that acidity out of the soil.
Cedars take a lot, don't they?
I mean, just rape it.
So do pines, don't they? Cedars and pines are kind of the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we piled in the lime and got everything right. But I mean, it's the most beautiful clover plot that you've ever seen. It looks amazing.
Yeah. And to go back on like that cheapest plot thing, the best bang for your buck, you said is clover. I agree. Clover and chicory, I mean, hands down, in my opinion, are the two best things that you can plant. Now, chicory, in my experience, chicory takes a while to germinate. It is a seed that but once it goes. Like I planted chicory in a plot last year, and I got a good rain after I planted it. I went back, I can't remember, 2 weeks later, and I'm like, it was really spotty. It looked like George Costanza's hair. It was like very, very very plotchy, and I'm like, shit, I'm gonna have to replant this or spot seed basically. Well, some time went by, like a week went by, and I'm like, well, I better go take a look at it real quick and just see. Maybe it came up or something. Like maybe I could do something else. I went back, luscious thing ever. No weeds, no nothing. It just took a while to germinate, and that's something I didn't know and I learned. And then after confiding in you a little bit, and you're like, yeah, chicory takes a little bit. But another thing I didn't know, chicory will come back for 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And this year I went in there in that video that we just put up on our YouTube channel where I put the screening. That was all chicory last year, and it didn't come up great, but there was spots where it did come up. I just tilled it back under because I'm going to do chicory in there again, probably clover and chicory this year, probably. But yeah, chicory's another one. It's in my experience, it's pretty low maintenance along with clover once you get it established.
Yeah, and then it's easy maintenance, easy to establish, very easy maintenance, and the first thing the does and the fawns need is that green, that good palatable food source in the spring, and that's always there for them through the summer. So they're just, when they're lactating and they're carrying these fawns and they're doing their thing, they've always got that good food source in the spring, and it's just, I think it's awesome. I love it. I plant as much clover as you can because it's just it's like 80% of your food source for the year,
Yep. Yeah. Well, how many years have you got regeneration out of a clover without replanting?
6 years, easy.
6. We've got one of the guys at our family farm. He's gotten 5 out of it without planting. I'm like, 5 solid years. Probably the 5th year, I think, if I remember right, it was kind of getting to the point where like, might want to rethink about seeding it. But I mean,
Was he frost seeding every year or not?
nope, no.
And see, I do it. You just do it because it's easy.
Yep.
And
pretty cheap too.
It's cheap and it's super easy and it keeps it full and lush. And then another thing I do is I always, before rain, I always go in there in the spring and fertilize the hell out of it.
That's one thing he did. What he would do is he would mow it, and he'd mow it as high as he could. He'd take the brush hog in and get the brush. Yep, just top it. He'd do that once, and then he'd fertilize it, and that's it. He wouldn't seed again. But I'll tell you what, man, it came up great, like for 4 or 5 years. And then, like I said, the 5th year was like, getting pretty thin. And I don't think he cut it that 5th year. And then the 6th year, it was like, go back in, till it back up. But think about that. Think about that in like even a high pressured area. If you don't want to stay in, you don't want to be in there all the time. If you can go in there 2 days, I say 2 days, all said and done. If you've got your soil sample and everything done, go in there, mow it and kill it one day. Wait for it to die. Go in there, till it, and plant it. You're done. 2 days in low pressure, low maintenance, and you're done. And you might have to go in there with a little plot saver or something, or spray it a little bit. So maybe 3 days, but that's over the course of a summer, or a fall, whenever you want to plant it. Me, like you said, you like to do it in the fall. I'd much rather do it in the frost seeding. I'd rather do it in the March, get a good time, February, March, get in there and frost seed it. That's where I agree with you. I would go back in. I was going to frost seed again this year. When I went back in there to seed it, it was already established, and I'm like, well, shit, I'm not going to have to seed this. So I've got clover that I'm going to put in a different plot. I didn't have to seed it again.
Yeah, and then to touch on something like you were talking about, when you talked about just the other day about cutting your clover, you don't have any weeds and it doesn't have this. But I'm here to tell you, dude, we get caught up so much in pretty plots.
100%. Yeah.
Because we're always videoing and we're always doing this and showing it and social media, and everything is always pretty and pristine and just looks perfect, like it's out of Whitetail News magazine or something. You know what I mean? And but the deer don't give a shit about that. They give
two fucks.
They don't give two shits if there's ragweed growing in your clover, and in fact they prefer it because they love it. They eat the shit out of it. Now they don't like grass. They don't eat grass, but they don't mind it. They just still go in there and eat the clover and pound the piss out of it. But let's say you go in there and you cut half of your tonnage down, right? Let's say it's thick and beautiful, but it's still got some grasses in it and some broadleaves here and there, and you go in there and you pound it with your brush cutter, and you top it all down to kill the grasses and the weeds, and then you have a hot spell comes through and it fries it. Well, you've got nothing. But what you've also
done, that's what you are.
even if it doesn't, and you get moisture and it's starting to grow back, you've taken all that tonnage completely away just to get rid of the looks, the bad look of the grasses and weeds.
I'm glad you brought that up though, because that's something I got caught up into years ago when you watch, and this is nothing against Lee and Tiffany at all. You watch like a Lee and Tiffany show on TV and you're like, man, they got a lush plot. Like I need that to kill a big deer. No, you don't. You don't.
No.
Like less is more. And
you can still have a lush plot that's filthy and dirty as shit and still kill big deer.
100%. And that's where, if I was to bring you into my 1 acre, my plot is maybe let's say 20 foot wide by 10 foot. You know what I mean? 20 by 10 at the biggest. It's tiny. And the deer, I mean, I'm getting cell cam pictures today of nonstop of deer just moseying through there, just mowing the shit out of it. Like it doesn't matter. And it's in the middle of the timber. You don't need that really pristine look. I mean, it looks great. It looks unbelievable, but you don't need it. And that was my question to you the other day, is like my clover starting to flower out. So like I was always told when it's starting to flower out and bud out, that's when you kind of need to clip the tops. Is that true, or is that something that I was led down a hallway?
No, I think I usually try to top mine if it's. I mean, and I don't cut very much off of it though. I like your buddy did. I try to top it, just barely top it. I think the less tonnage, the less you take away from it, the better. So if you just cut the white tops, the cotton tops off of it, then you're good.
Yep. What's your favorite clover? I mean, there's a ton of different clovers, like a ladino or a crimson clover. Like, what's your favorite clover to plant?
Yeah, we've been experimenting a whole lot, but like a frosty Berseem clover is like a very, very hardy, cold tolerant clover, and that's Dr. Craig Harper. That's one of his babies. He's the one who suggested that to Paul and I to do some drilling, and what we do with it is we have big alfalfa stands for food plots, and what we'll do every September is alfalfa is different than clover. You can drill into both of them, but alfalfa has really deep tap roots. I mean, they grow deep, and it's
like that's what I've heard as well. Like, alfalfa's deep, and it's like almost. Is it wrong for me to say it's like a lot like a tree root? Like,
yeah, they're crazy. They're very long. They go deep, so they can withstand the drill. Is where I'm going with this. Like,
okay,
I've drilled into clover plots in the fall and like September time, and I've completely demolished them because I've just cut the shit out of their root system because they weren't deep enough. And literally, I'm talking last year, I went into a lush green. I mean, I'm talking 10 inches. 12-inch tall, lush green clover, drilled into it with oats and winter wheat and brassicas, and literally completely demolished the clover plot.
So the clover just died?
It stunted the shit out of it. I mean, it stunted enough that, I mean, late season, it wasn't worth a shit. Like, it just, not late season, but I'm talking like
November, Thanksgiving time.
November, when you got deer cruising through it looking for the hot does and stuff. It was really, really stunted bad. Where I was going with that originally is alfalfa. Their roots are so deep that every year we'll drill into that with winter oats or buck forage oats and winter wheat and brassicas and frosty Berseem clover and some crimson clover. And dude, it is amazing. It doesn't stunt the alfalfa one bit, and you always have that clover coming up underneath of it and filling in. The deer love it, and it's just extra tonnage and extra food for them. So that's also another tip. Like, if you have an alfalfa field and you're using it for deer hunting, go in there and drill stuff into it, right in front of your tree stand. Let's say your tree stand's on the edge of a 40-acre alfalfa field. Go in there and plant 3 acres right in front of your 2 acres, or even a half an acre right in front of your stand. If you got access to a drill, just go drill something into it. If your farmer doesn't mind, it's a hell of a food plot.
Okay, I've got 2 questions. I don't want to forget them. And I'm going to say them right now, and then let's answer one first. What is the difference between alfalfa and clover? And the second one is, do you have to drill it, or can you broadcast it? So tackle one at a time.
Well, first, you don't have to drill it. You can broadcast it, yeah.
In clover or alfalfa?
Yep. You just want to make sure that you cultipack it and you get it. Now, it's best to drill it because you don't lose any soil moisture.
Right. Now, if you go in there, let's say you go into a clover stand or an alfalfa, doesn't matter, but let's say you broadcast like buck forage oats or winter wheat, whatever you want. You're saying you take a cultipacker over and you roll it and try to push it into the ground a little bit?
Into an existing one?
Yes. Yep.
No. And you can't, here's another deal. You can't go into an alfalfa field and broadcast alfalfa into it and take off.
Because it's really thick. It's really like...
Well, alfalfa puts off a toxin in the soils, and let's say you have bulb patches.
Yep.
You can't just go in there and broadcast alfalfa in there and fill those patches in and let them take. Okay. Most of them you have to drill them in or just get them into the soil so they come in.
I got you. What's the toxin they put off?
I don't know, but it's a bad one.
Like, it won't let anything grow.
Well, I mean, it just creates a toxin within itself, and it just No, it's just you can't just you can't seed alfalfa back into it. Like you have to literally tear it up and like if you're gonna reseed, like what alfalfa is like 4 year deal.
Yep.
And then you have to rip it all up and replant it.
So that's what I've heard about alfalfa too, that it's really hard to get out of the ground.
Yeah.
But I never knew why. So
Yeah.
they put this toxin off then?
Yep, and I have to dive into it deeper. All I know for sure is that it has a hell of a toxin and that it won't let shit grow around. I mean, you have to rip it all up and reseed it completely. And it won't let you go in there and fill those spots in without drilling them. You can drill them in, but you're not going to broadcast them into them and get it to work. I learned that the hard way. I mean, I was told you could, and a guy told me I should in Roundup Ready alfalfa, and I went in there and spent, I don't know, it was a 6 or 7 acre alfalfa field, and my big ass walked around it for 3 hours frost seeding.
And it didn't come up, did it?
Wasted $500 in Roundup Ready alfalfa, you know?
Oh man. And that's what I've read before and heard from guys is like it's harder than shit to get out of the ground because I've heard of guys like quote unquote ripping it up or tilling it under and it still won't work. Like I've heard of guys doing that. Like this toxin is, but I didn't know it was like a toxin. Nobody could answer the question. So it was like it just wouldn't grow.
Yeah, and I'm not the right one to ask that question. I know it has it. I know if we talk to that's someone you need to bring on your podcast. You need to get a hold of Craig Harper.
I will.
Literally, I'll give you his contact. Call him up and tell him that I sent you and you want to do a podcast with him on. He's habitat god. Like
that's what I've heard, not from just you, from other people's. He's the dude like to get on.
Yeah, like I've walked through. I've actually got him coming to our farms here in Missouri. When is it? In 2 weeks. He's going to do a timber walk with me, but he's the kind of guy, he just walks through timber with you, and he'll say, well, that there's, and I'm not even going to try to act like him because he's got that southern
draw.
Oh yeah. Southern accent. He's real quirky and funny, and but he just knows his shit, and he can name off about 43 plant species in about a minute, and I'm just sitting there looking at it like, well,
jaw dropped.
Looks like weeds,
I thought that was poison ivy.
Yeah, and he can also tell you the protein out of each plant and how much a deer will benefit from that plant. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. So he's one you need to have on your podcast. He will blow your mind, but when you do, you need to have a notebook handy.
Yeah, that's
because you're going to want to write it down.
I might be talking to you a little bit before I have him on there to get a whole bunch of ammunition ready. I've got a lot, but nowhere near. I mean, your job is food plots and habitat. Mine is not. So
right.
So to kind of to reverse a little bit, what's the difference between clover and alfalfa then?
Well, your alfalfa, I mean, you make a hell of a lot more money off of it. I know that much.
Because that's like a hay. That's what people are using.
It is.
Farmers are using for hay. But you only, like you said, which I know just because my brother-in-law is a farmer, and you're only getting 3-4 years out of alfalfa.
Yeah.
And then you're having to, and I find that on our family farm here in Michigan, we've got a 65-acre hayfield, alfalfa field, and the last 2 years it's needed to be replanted by the farmer. It's not my brother-in-law, it's someone else that farms it, but it's shit right now. Like, there's hardly any alfalfa in it. So it literally is you need to go in there and kill it off after your final cutting, kill it off, and then till it under and get it out the best you can. And then, with ours is 65 acres, but our deer density is so big, or so many deer per square mile in that area that the farmer will not put beans or corn in there because they just get devoured.
Yeah, that's another thing about alfalfa is it grows so rapidly that it can withstand that pounding. And clover can do it the same way, but man, alfalfa's it's way more palatable, and it's like a diamond in a coal in a coal pit, it really
Yep.
for a deer. I mean, they will search that alfalfa out if it's somewhere in that surrounding area. And they eat clover too, but man, alfalfa is like, it's just a magnet. They love it.
Yeah. Would you say that is up there with like beans for late season food?
Late season?
Yeah.
No. Usually our alfalfa is all done by, October. You get a few frosts on, it's done.
Okay.
Yeah. So alfalfa's in my neck of the woods, alfalfa is really good like in spring through the summer and early fall.
Through October maybe?
Yeah. First few frosts on it, and then once it starts browning, the deer just get off of it. They're done with it.
I got you.
Yeah, but one of the main things is it's a hell of an income. You get 3 cuttings off of it a year, and man, you make some good money if you got some property, and it's a great way to feed a lot of deer and bring them to your neck of the woods in the summertime.
That is a fact because you come up to my family farm, we got a box blind on it on the alfalfa field, and you can sit in that in the summer. Even in September, I think the most deer that we've seen in that at one time is like 130 deer and 65 acres of alfalfa, and I think like $45, something like that. Like the deer, that farm it's basically, the square mile is like a continuous timber. There's little ag fields within it, but not when I mean little, like 60 acres and smaller. So
Sure.
all the deer attract to this alfalfa field because all the other fields around it are potato fields. We've got a potato field or farmer around us, so it's like the only green source in the summer, really. And deer, it's nothing to go up there and see 100 deer a night in the summer. It's really cool to actually like get kids up there and sit in the blind and watch them. And it's just, you see deer all over. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Another difference between alfalfa and clover is simple maintenance and the expense of it. Alfalfa is crazy expensive to seed. Like, it's expensive, and clover's not. And it's just a little bit more tolerable, to human error than alfalfa. Alfalfa's, it's once you establish it and get it rolling, it's damn good. But I don't know. Clover's really good too. I like them both. It all depends on what your purpose is. If you want to, suck deer in and hold them and make some money on it, then if you've got bigger stands, then I'd say, alfalfa would be your ticket.
Yep, for sure.
It's going to cost you more money to establish it and maintain it.
Yeah, but you also could get that money out of it though too, like you said. It's a good revenue.
Damn good revenue. Yep.
So to push further a little bit here, I know we're getting lengthy on this, but I got one more question. This is a question that I have for you, and it's something I've been diving into the last couple of years, but water sources. How important are water sources to you? And then once you answer that, I've got another follow-up question about that, because it's something that I was going to do last week and I didn't because I'm really hesitant about it. But how important are water sources to you?
Well, I think, food, shelter, and water. That's what any deer's looking for, With that being said, clean water source, that's tricky to find in these old nasty ponds, and it's even, more of a issue or more of a topic when you're talking about EHD and CWD and all that kind of stuff combined. You want those clean water sources where the deer aren't walking around and trudging in the mud and picking up midges and passing the disease around and all that kind of stuff. But water sources are huge. I don't particularly hunt over them unless it's very early season and hot, or if it's during the rut. And then if it's hot during the rut and, we get an unseasonably warm day in November and the deer balls to the wall chasing and they're hot and they're thirsty, then I'll hunt a pond in the timber close to a bedroom or something like that. And it's usually pretty hot. But to say that I focus on them, I don't. I don't. I think there's damn sure value in them for sure. I mean, hell, anyone who's seen Pat Reeves build water holes with, his skid steer and lay the tarp down or the black plastic down and then bury it and then build the bank all the way around it and seed the banks down in clover. I mean, he's making what we're doing for kill plots, he's doing for water kill plots.
And they're doing it at a successful rate year in and year out in Minnesota on big deer.
Absolutely pounding their asses. So there's something to it. Don't think there's not. There is. But that's the cool thing about deer hunting too, is that you can be as wild as you want, you can be as laid back as you want, and depending on what you do, you guys, I mean, anyone can have the same results. It's just there's a lot of luck in it, and it's just all you get out of it what you put into it, is what I say.
Okay, so which I totally agree with. My further question is, I have a barrel that I've like a 55-gallon plastic drum that I cut in half.
Barrel.
What's that?
Whiskey barrel.
Whiskey barrel. I drink a lot of whiskey.
Absolutely.
No, it's a blue 55-gallon plastic drum that I cut in half. Okay, long ways. And in this plot where I put this screen, it's not a big plot, but I was going to bury this in the ground. Now, I have a horse trough that's a 30-gallon, I think, that I bought from a hardware that I did on my family farm. I buried it, put it in the ground. Deer drink the shit out of it. But it took them about 2 to 3 seasons before they were regularly coming to it in the daylight. So I'm hesitant about it. They're drinking the shit out of it, but I'm almost wondering if that was like an instance where I like did too much. Now, what's your take on that? Like, is that too much?
No, I think what it is, they just weren't used to it. They didn't have a clue what it was.
Or it took a little bit finding it?
Yep, absolutely. I don't think you didn't do too much. It's not hurting anything whatsoever. They weren't used to it, and they had to figure it out and get on it. They've been used to going to the neighbor's pond and drinking for all their life. I mean, then you all of a sudden throw this water source out there and they're like, and then also they're not going to come in there and drink 6-7 deer at a time, you know what I mean?
Right. Yep. And my whole take with it is I want to be able to shoot it from a stand. Like I feel like if I put it somewhere away from a stand where I can't shoot it, it's not valuable to me. That's, I guess, where my head's at. But I've got a perfect spot where to put it in the plot, and I feel like it will just enhance it more. It's almost kind of like a food plot. There's no hurt to it. But I also think on the back end, like when I did that, not only 15 minutes away on a different farm where it's like, man, it took them a little while to get to it and like really use it. Did I almost hurt the area by doing that? I don't know.
I think I don't think you hurt it. I'd say you probably just threw a wrench in it and they just didn't know what it was. They didn't have a clue what was going on and wasn't sure what it was, so they figured it out. And now they just drink the shit out of it. So. Yep.
I've only filled it once too.
Anything. You what?
I've only filled it once, and
Mother Nature's taking care of it.
Yep, and put a stick in it. Obviously, if you're doing something like that and you bury it, put a stick in it so squirrels and rodents and stuff like that, if they get in, they can get the hell out without drowning, and you got dead animals in it. But yeah, in 3 years, I've only filled it one time, the initial time, and it's Mother Nature. She's taking right over, and deer drink the shit out of it now.
Yeah, and then you can use mineral there, right?
We cannot. Nope.
Okay. I didn't know. So you can't use like the Banks packets where you can dump the liquid mineral in there?
Okay. So last summer, I feel like there's some gray area because those Banks packets are unbelievable. We've used them out of state.
Absolutely.
And Banks, by the way, makes a great water source, and I have one of their water troughs. You know that. I have it on the 1 acre farm. Great way to get inventory in states that you cannot bait or put mineral out for cameras. I mean, deer hit this water source like crazy, and it's a great way to get inventory of bucks. But that's for another topic. But back to this mineral packet. So Banks Outdoors makes this mineral packet, which you and I know.
Yep.
We've used it in Kansas and places like that, and in Ohio, stuff like that, where you can put mineral in and everything out. It works great. Now, I called the Michigan DNR, and I said I talked to one of their biologists, and I also talked to one of their DNR officers. Two different conversations. And when I talked to the DNR officer, I said, okay, this company offers basically a mineral packet. I said, you can go put it in a pond that's already established. You could put it in a mud puddle, or you could put it in whatever you want. And it just, enhances, animals. It doesn't hurt them. It helps them, and it helps their growth, their lactation, their antler growth, everything. Everything benefits the animals, not only just deer, all animals. It'll benefit them.
Yep.
It's like Gatorade for animals, basically. So I said, can you use this in a water source? And they couldn't give me a definitive yes or no that it was a mineral or it wasn't. They were like, well, there's some gray area there. And one guy, the biologist, said that it's like, well, you are concentrating deer to a certain area. I said, okay, well, what if I go put it in a pond that's however big, or a lake? Then they're like, well, then there's some gray area there, and I said, well, what if I put it in a mud puddle in my driveway? Or, they couldn't give me a yes, you can use it, or no, you can't use it. So I don't know. I don't know if I can or not, because I have some packets and I have not used them yet here, so I don't know what to do.
Well, we can't use them in Missouri as of last year, or mineral, but we'll be able to again. But we use the hell out of them in Oklahoma and Kansas, and there's definitely a difference. Deer do. We put them side by side with fresh water, and then the water with the mineral packets in it from Banks, and they prefer it. They pound they pound those water tanks with the packet in it.
Yep, and that's something I might actually call them again and just kind of reiterate, like, this is what I got. Clarify. I even to the DNR officer and the biologist, I read off the back of the bag to them, like, this is what's in it, and there's nothing like crazy in it. It's just. It's a mineral, it is.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's another way, too, to be able to... you can use it in a little pond or a little creek or something like that. Throw it in there. It's not going to hurt anything. Nope, it doesn't, kill the fish or kill the frogs, nothing like that. So it's got a cool green look to it, though.
Yeah, and it's salty.
It is salty, yeah.
It's salty. Yeah.
But, well, cool, man. I mean, we're damn near 2 hours into this. I appreciate you taking the time to do this and come on and talk a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's always fun to talk habitat and deer and just bullshit with a buddy, so it's good to catch up. It's been a while. And
I will tell you, it was a 4-beer podcast, because I'm about ready to polish off the 4th Busch Latte.
Well, I had 2 when I started, and my little girl... Cadence brought me out another one. I told her to go put it back in the fridge. I'm like, I better not.
You have her trained really well.
Yeah, she's I got a good clan of girls around here.
Yeah, you do. You are in the estrogen ocean. I will tell you that. You got 3 little girls and a wife. Is your dog a male or female?
We've got a female and a male now.
Oh, you have both. Do you still have Fletch?
Yeah, we do. He's old as shit, man. He just kind of walks around aimlessly barking at shit.
For some odd reason, I felt like Fletch was gone.
He's still here, and we've got another black lab pup now. Her name's Moxie, and she's just a year old. And my God, I could do without her, to be honest with you. I think it's brought some life to Fletch, but man, she tears everything up that we have in the yard. If you leave it outside, it's gone, done.
I mean, you and Fletch are really outnumbered, though. I mean, you got 5 girls to 2 guys. Like, that's a bad problem to have there.
Yeah, it's rough. It's gonna get worse before it gets better, though. I promise you that.
But those girls, I will tell you, because I've got 3 girls in the house, one being a dog. But those
Yep.
girls will, they keep you in check. They keep you on your toes. So
Yeah, they wrap you up. They wrap you up good.
Yep, they do. Well, cool, man. I appreciate you doing this again. It's always good cutting up with you and talking habitat, like you said, and, just bouncing ideas off each other. And thank you, everybody out there listening, that you did submit questions. I appreciate that. And, yeah, appreciate it, man.
Well, like they say, it takes every one of us to make all this stuff work. So the more we can all talk about it and ask questions and answer questions and bounce ideas off each other, the more we learn, the faster. And a lot of these guys that we all talk to, they've done trial and error for all these years. So
100%.
we're getting the advanced version.
Yep. Yeah, actually, I had a guy reach out to me today from Iowa. I don't know him. He's a podcast listener. And he said he listened to the episode that Casey and Justin and I did about my Iowa buck that I killed last year. And He said he took a pointer out of there that Casey and we took paracord and hung up cedar trees that we cut to break up our silhouette. And he's like, that was one of the best things I took out of that podcast, because he's like, I never thought about that before. And honestly, it made me so happy to hear that, because when I started this podcast, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to, the little nuggets that people can pick up on that are like, man, I should try that. Like, I never thought about that. Like, I don't want to claim to be an expert at all at anything. I just want to be out there bullshitting with buddies like we are right now, cutting it up, talking deer hunting. And if anybody can take anything out of it, that's what I'm helping for, And
that's what it's all about.
Exactly, That's what I'm all about, and that's what I appreciate. And thank you to that guy that reached out and said that. That was really cool. So,
absolutely.
But, well, cool, man. You get back to your girls, and I'm gonna let you go. You have a good vacation next week. I know you guys are heading south, and we're heading north. So
we're
gonna go on vacation and get away for a couple days.
It'd be nice just to go and unwind a little bit and watch the girls play. And I know you're in the same boat. It'd be nice just to get away and just enjoy it for a little bit.
Yep. Well, cool, man. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good, buddy.
And there it is. Another great episode. Thank you to Steven for coming on. Hopefully everybody took a lot out of this episode. Sometimes we did get rambling there, but a lot of cool habitat stuff on just about everything. I'm going to reiterate a little bit, though. If you guys have any questions, not even just for Justin and I to answer, but I've got some resources, too, that I can reach out to and get you a couple different opinions that we can have guys on the podcast, or we can talk about it. Or if you know anybody that wants to come on the podcast to talk about their farm, habitat, anything. If you know anybody out there that wants to be on a podcast, reach out to me. DM me, personal message, whatever. And let's get something going here. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for your support. And I'm on vacation, so I'm going to sign off. I'm going to go have another bush light, and I'm going to have a good rest of my week, and hopefully everybody does as well. So we will have another episode coming up next week. So thank you guys very much, and have a good rest of your week.